morning, everybody. Day 1 of session 2 of 2026. Well, kind of day 2. We kind of started yesterday, didn't we? Yeah. So I guess it's day 2. This is the week of the year that is exactly halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So when we're outside and it feels so bitter cold, but you can also kind of hear the seeds and the roots under the snow and the light feels different. We're halfway there. So it was really cold at our last session too. I think you all know I had to leave that one early for my mother dying. I left on that Saturday and went to see her really in her final hours, even though that wasn't what the news had been. It was supposed to be a few weeks, but it was not. And so leaving session, and we talk a lot about taking session with you into the world and taking it with you into every moment, keeping that home of session alive in every step. And I've never been so grateful for this practice as I was on that day. Just feeling the session, that what happens in session is exactly what needs to happen, right? And having that deep practice in this whole container, which goes far beyond our zendo, out into the nursing home to hold my mom's feet one more time and tell her I loved her and kiss her forehead. There were a lot of difficult things happening for people at that session. You know, we had a lot of major losses for folks, and still there's this practice that's going on with it, right? Like we're actually practicing so deeply with whatever is arising, whatever that is, nothing separate. Whether it's our health, death, you know, any of those 5 remembrances, right? They come up for real. And when we get to practice this way, in this container, you know, there's not enough gratitude to express for that noble friendship and the lineage and our teachers and everything that brings this session to us on this day. There isn't enough gratitude that can be expressed. So this is our last session of the winter practice period, and we'll be moving into spring Ango by the time we have our March session. Maybe the snow will be melted. It'll still technically be winter, but this winter we've been practicing a lot with the quote that Rinzin Roshi gave us, every step home. Doan Roshi gave a wonderful Teisho last night. If you weren't here live, try to get a chance to listen to that when you can, talking about the home part of that phrase, every step home. And what is that home? Last session we talked a lot about careful stepping, being mindful of each step. And in this container specifically, we've gone to such great lengths to allow ourselves to actually experience each step exquisitely, to notice or have pointed out to us the misstep and make the correction and move on. And how do we stay home during all of that now? So this session we're considering deeply what that home is, what it means, how it expresses right now in this moment. What is home with every sight, with every sound, with every smell, every bite, every taste, every thought, and every feeling, which don't always feel like the home that we want to imagine. And how do we make it so that that is our home, and we just are dwelling with what's arising now? Since my mom died, I've been given a lot of thought, actually, to what is home. If everything goes well, your mother is your first home. A baby doesn't even know it's a separate being for many months. This is your actual being when you're an infant. I was my mom's first baby, and I remember what it's like to hold my own first baby. That feeling of really indescribable home. It's very obvious, it's right here, right? Just this right now, this baby, this mother. And as I've been grieving, I've really been working a lot with feeling lonely, which I didn't really expect because like my mom and I didn't hang out every day or anything. I didn't even call her every day. We just didn't have that kind of relationship. And yet there's this deep loneliness that I feel. And, I live here at the temple, so we practice a lot with solitude too. That's my daily life, is practicing with solitude and really kind of examining what is this loneliness and solitude. And I find myself this kind of desire to separate those, to want the solitude and not want the loneliness, and to maybe put a little judgment in there, right? This loneliness has a quality of longing, of kind of longing for something in the past or in the future. I can't really define it, but in many ways it does have to do with the loss of my mother, but it's also just a very natural feeling, right? Like we're lonely sometimes. And the cold has been so cold this year. Even the 20s feel warm now. I took my hat off on my walk yesterday because it's so hot out here. It's like 23. I have no hair. But it's been so cold, and the cold's been so bitter. And it lends itself, right, to like kind of, for me, it lends itself to kind of indulging in this loneliness and in this analysis and in this judgment of the loneliness. And so I feel like this winter has been such a good teacher for me about really easing into that and letting the loneliness and the solitude just intermingle, right? What's arising now? What is this feeling of loneliness? What is this calm abiding in solitude? Which one is home? How are they both home? When we have residents here, we frequently work on a set of teachings that Rinzai Roshi gave us for residential practice. They are 3 couplets. There's space and place, time and being, time and being, and solitude and community. So in these teachings that we work with when we have residents in practice, we talk about a lot of, we've been studying the Lankavatara for a couple years. Rinzai's been just endlessly and deeply, compassionately teaching us on this sutra. And the sutra talks so much about solitude. I mean, I just did a quick, Kindle search, find the word. It's like 18 times or something, using the actual word solitude. So solitude is really important for deepening our practice and our own spirituality. This quote from the sutra jumped out at me when I was seeing how many times solitude is mentioned. The sutra says, "The bodhisattva should retire by himself to a quiet, secluded place where he may reflect within himself without relying on anyone else, exert himself to make successive advances along the stages. This solitude is the characteristic feature of the inner attainment of self-realization of noble wisdom." And this is home, right? And it's not separate from lonely. It's not separate. And so how do we cultivate this solitude, this kind of peaceful dwelling that isn't dependent on the circumstance, right? What's under all of this? What is this ground of being? And when you look to what the Buddha says about this, you go into the Pali Canon, the Buddha talks a lot about home leaving, about, for the Buddha himself, and at the time, in many places of the world still today, right? Literally leaving the home, leaving the family of origin, the community, and sequestering oneself into a monastic community. So in the Buddha, he also, there's a whole code of things for the monks, how they're going to live together, how they're going to be together. The Vinaya code is extensive. And then there's also the Buddha addressing the folks who are not home leaving in that way, that literal home leaving. There's still a need to have some level of renunciation, right? There's still a need to, the Buddha describes how our household lives can be a dusty path. The life gone forth, the home leaving is like an open air. So this dusty path is, our endless commitments to so many important things, our families, our careers, our loves, our hobbies, so many beautiful, important things. And there's a way that those can be very dusty, and I think we know how that feels when it feels dusty in our lives. And there's a way that that's open air, right? And it's not dependent on the actual circumstance. So how do we engage in this home leaving practice, this really abandoning the identity home that we've built around the career, this identity home that we've built around the kleshas of, and the greed and the anger and the ignorance. This is the home that we are identifying with, that we're clinging to. How do we home leave that, right? And come into the open air of our true selves. So, the Buddha thought this was so important that they actually also wrote a Vinaya-type code for the householder, right? To help shake off that dust, to identify what are these many responsibilities that we have and we take care of, and how do we practice not dusty that way? This is an interesting side note. In that code, the Buddha also gives us some financial advice, which I think is very sound. He says we should save 1/4 for emergencies, 1/4 for personal use, and 2/4 for business and household use. I just love this, fully awakened guy is also so deeply practical. Here's how to be financially responsible. I just love it. All right. Well, anyways, this is a very important thing, though. The Buddha talks about home leaving really a lot throughout the Pali Canon. And this is about finding that solitude, right? This is about leaving behind all those afflictions, being able to see the afflictions, right? We have to be able to see it so that we can drop it. And we do this every single time we are at sesshin, every single time we sit in zazen. Roshi tells us to die every time you sit. Leave home and arrive exactly at home, not separate. So every step home is also every step leaving home, not staying stuck anywhere. And then we need to continue to do so, right? We need to get up off of our cushion and take that practice with us and be at home washing the dishes, at home taking care of the kid, at home talking to our colleagues, at home with our teachers and our friends, and in our health and in our wellness and in our illness. It's this deep letting go of the clinging. And at the same time, showing up exactly what we need to be. We need to be the colleague, the mother, the husband, the wife, the friend, right? We actually show up as that role without clinging to the identity of it. And last night, in Doan Roshi's Teisho, she shared with us the parable about the rich father and the poor son. And she used that parable to show us how easy it is to forget this, right? how easy it is to forget what is home, to be running around after it in our very home. Toward the end of the parable, the poor son, right, he's come back home and he doesn't even recognize that this is home. And so they give him a job as a servant, cleaning the home, right? And Doan just so beautifully elucidated for us how this is like how we sit and we work on our negative karma, right? And we take care of those negative emotions, and we have to clean the home. We have to recognize that we have to clean it. And we have to see how even those negative emotions and even all those running around lost in our home is still home. This too is it, right? So when we think ourselves, as she was saying, when we think ourselves too small for this boundlessness, this too is the Buddha arising. And we can be a lot more comfortable if we see it. She reminded us of that beautiful koan, "You've searched and searched through the tall grasses. Now, dear one, where is your true nature?" And of course, home is our natural state, right? It's our natural state. And the tall grasses are not separate. So this need to clean the house, to clear away the karmic habit energy of all these afflictions piled up over kalpas of lifetimes that we are in this very moment. This isn't separate. This is essential. We have to clean out our house of the dusty path and open the windows for the air and the space to feel the love and the beauty of this very precious human life. So today, I want to look a little bit at a sutta from the Pali Canon. This is the Bhattacharata Sutta, which has a verse that you've probably all encountered before. But before we get there, I think this is a really interesting sutra. The word Bhattacharata doesn't actually translate. Like, nobody actually knows exactly what it means. It might be a word that like the Buddha just made up and kind of used internally. So folks, many translators have produced different titles for it. So this is the Bhattacharata Sutta, but then these are titles on this chapter, right? So we have the Discourse on Ideal Solitude. I like that. Or the Ideal Lover of Solitude. The Discourse on Knowing the Better Way to Live Alone. A Single Auspicious Attachment. This is one of my personal favorite choices of titles. Lonely Blissfulness. Feels like that could have been my Dharma name last week. A Single Excellent Night. One Fine Night. An Auspicious Day. How to Have an Excellent Day. And The True Saint. Those are all titles that I found for this exact same passage. And I got kind of into this, so I actually read some like very academic analyses of this word and different people's translators' takes on it. But what the common thread is, right, is that this passage that we're going to look at, this sutta, is it's describing someone who's really taking pleasure in the present moment, who isn't trapped in the past and who isn't longing and clinging to a future that doesn't exist yet, but who's deeply present, who's having one excellent night, right? Who's dwelling in this ideal solitude, dwelling at home in every step. And that's what we're doing here at Sesshin, right? We're practicing this. We're giving ourselves the space and the time and the energy to really practice it and to feel it when it's off, and to bring ourselves back to the home. Okay. And then there's another interesting thing about the sutra, which is that they tell it, the Pali Canon, they like to repeat things because it's an oral tradition, right? So it's very usual to see the same thing repeated, so you can memorize it and learn it. But in this case, they actually tell the same exact, they give the same sutra 4 ways, 4 different passages, with 4 different players at doing this, right? So the first one, the Buddha presents the whole thing. And this is, it's given as a summary, which is a 4-verse poem in this case, and then his exposition of the summary. And that's presented in whole. And then you turn the page, and the next chapter is Ananda. And Ananda is reciting the Buddhist teachings like Ananda loved to do and was very good at. And the Buddha comes in and hears it. And he's like, this is wonderful. Great job, Ananda. This teaching instructs, rouses, urges, and gladdens the Sangha. So there's this affirmation, right, of Ananda giving the Buddhist teaching. And then you turn the page, and then there's this other monk, Bhikkhu Samiti, and a deity comes to him by the lake and says, oh, can you tell me the ideal solitude discourse, both the summary and the exposition, please? And Samiti is like, no, I don't remember it. I just don't, I'm sorry. And they go back and forth. Maybe you remember it a little. No, I don't remember it at all. And the deity then says, well, you need to go find the Buddha. You need to learn this you need to learn this discourse. You need to master it, and you need to bear it in mind. So you need to really take it in. So of course, Samiti goes, and the Buddha obliges, and he gets this. And then finally you turn the page, and there's a 4th chapter. Like, this is the 4th time of an already repeating passage, right? But this is the 4th full recitation of it. And in the 4th chapter, a deity asks another bhikkhu, Lomaska, for the summary and exposition. And Lomaska, he just knows the summary, he knows the poem, and he doesn't know the exposition. And he says, well, you need to go find that. You need to learn the exposition. You need to put this into your heart. The deity is saying you need to actually take this teaching in and express it, like have it in your mind at all times so that it's just what's coming forward, right? And we're studying the Benedict's Dharma. I think Doan Roshi mentioned this the other day, sort of as a monastic study. And there's this line about you have to let the teachings pierce your heart. And that's what they're saying here in the Pali Canon, right? The Buddha is saying when you recite the teachings and you're taking them in, you can help pierce the heart of others. And if you don't know the teachings, you have to settle in and learn them. And we learn this in the Lam Rim, right? Like our teachers are showing us this in the Lam Rim, that we have to take these teachings in, make them at home with ourselves, and then go forward. So letting the teachings pierce your heart. I think maybe we'll read the actual passage now, since I've said a lot about it. So this translation is from Bhikkhu Bodhi, and you can find it in Bhikkhu Bodhi. I think we have his full collection of his translations of the discourses of the Pali Canon, and it is in the middle-length discourses, which is the middle-sized book. And this is called, he translates it as a single excellent night. But again, others refer to it as ideal solitude. So here's what it actually says. Thus I have heard. Thus the teachings have pierced my heart. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jetta's Grove. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus? Venerable Sir, they replied. And the Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, I shall teach you the summary and exposition of the one who has had a single excellent night. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Let the teachings pierce your heart. Here they come, here they are. Receive them and let them in all the way. Get out of your way about this, right? So here it is. This is the summary. Let not a person revive the past or on the future build his hopes, for the past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that and be sure of it invincibly and unshakably. Today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come, who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, by day, by night, it is he, the peaceful sage has said, who has had an excellent single night of ideal solitude and home. Okay? So that's the whole summary. The whole teaching is right there in those 4 verses. And then when we go back and look at them, we look at just that first verse, which almost at first reading has a little bit of like a graduation card sound to it, right? Like, don't hold on to the past, don't look at the future, it's not here yet. But actually, how many months, days, and years do we spend clinging to the past, worrying about the future? How many periods of zazen do we battle this? So when the Buddha goes on in his exposition, he asks us, how do we not revive the past? How do we actually do that? We have a past, we have memory, we have fond memories and terrifying memories, and they come and they go, and how do we not revive that? Well, the answer, of course, is that one does not nurture delight in the thinking about the past, right? We don't savor it and cling to it and really enjoy the rerunning of the rerun. We see what's happening. We see it, we acknowledge it, and we let it go. Return to the one. So we don't nurture the delight thinking, oh, I had such wonderful things in the past, such wonderful feelings, such wonderful consciousness, such wonderful tastes, touches, smells, all the wonderful things, or the horrible things. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if they're wonderful or horrible. We're not clinging on to them. We want to not be clinging on to them. We don't want to be actually stuck in the past, ruminating there. And alternatively, we have the future. We don't, on the future, build his hopes. The past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. We lose so much precious human life on a future that hasn't arisen yet, missing what is arising right now, which is actually this worry, right? The worry is arising right now. So one does not build up hope on the future by not nurturing delight in those thoughts, by not digging into them, by not making space in the home, by not getting all dusty with it, right? So then we go back to the second verse. Instead of this clinging and aversion, with insight let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that and be sure of it, invincible, unshakable, right? What is that home that does not depend on circumstance and is unshakable? How do we, when we're standing, know we're standing? When we're sitting, know we're sitting? Not be thinking about sitting when we're standing and vice versa. So how are we swept away by the present? So this is what the Buddha says. Here, bhikkhus, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, who has no regard for skill and discipline in the dharma. They regard their feelings and their thoughts as the self. They regard forms as self and self as forms. They regard their perceptions as a solid self, formations as self, consciousness as self, thoughts and feelings as self, thoughts about loneliness and feelings of loneliness as a self that is fixed. And I am this grief, I am this anger, I am this illness, I am this ridiculous mistake, identifying and clinging. And alternatively, how bhikkhus is one invincible in regard to the presently arising states. Here, bhikkhus, the noble one, is skilled and disciplined in the Dharma and does not regard these things that are arising as the self, as a fixed, permanent identity, right? So this true home, this doesn't rely on the circumstance of the presently arising state. And that was what the Buddha said about the verses. And the bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted, as always. And we go back to the poem, though. We go back to the verse. And there's still 2 more sections. Today, the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come, who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. Death is certain, right? In the Lamrim teachings we just had over the weekend, Dolan Roshi talked about precious human life. And every day we spend some of that essence, right? Every day some of that essence is needed. And what are we doing with it today? And this moment, just this actual moment right now. But one who dwells ardently, relentlessly by day, by night, practicing with what's arising now, it is he who has an excellent single night. So we're lucky that we get to hear the Hans so often, in case we forgot. And then in the night, we get to hear the evening Gata, so that should we wake up again in the morning, we'll not squander this precious human life. So it's this kind of deep mindfulness, knowing the wholesome from the unwholesome, relaxing into ourselves, into our Buddha nature, getting out of our way, right? It requires discipline and commitment, and it also is just right there, right? It's right here. So every step is home. Even the steps that kind of hurt a lot, right? The rocks and the stubbing of the toes and the stepping on the feet of others and having your own feet stepped on. Every step home. And I really appreciated Roshi's talk last night and just about how easy it is to forget that, right? How easy it is just to be running around kind of looking for that when what's arising right now is exactly the Buddha. And so we just keep at it, right? We come to sesshin, we sit together, enjoy our noble friendship, we study the sutras together, our daily zazen, just this breath. I want to read the verse one more time, but I want to read it from Thich Nhat Hanh's translation, because it's just maybe a little softer, a little more gentle, and also just really brings up a certain flavor. So he translates the verse this way: do not pursue the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. The past no longer is, and the future has not come. Looking deeply at life as it is, in the very here and now, the practitioner dwells perfectly at home in stability and freedom. perfectly at home in stability and freedom with life as it is right now, the arising state right now. We must be diligent today to wait till tomorrow is too late. Death comes unexpectedly, and we cannot bargain with it. The sage calls a person who dwells in this mindfulness night and day the one who knows the better way to live alone, not dependent on circumstance. Let's dedicate the merit of this Dharma talk to all of those who are talking, to all of those who are listening, to the activity of this very mind as it is in this very life. Dedicate that merit to all of those who do not know a home, to those whose homes are in physical danger and are not safe, to those whose spiritual homes feel like dusty paths, and to all beings throughout space and time, full and complete awakening with no exceptions whatsoever. May it be so.